step back into the thrilling, inventive world of MacGyver, 1985 to 1992, the beloved series that made Richard Dean Anderson a household name with his daring stunts and ingenious problem-solving. But behind the action-packed adventures, some of the iconic cast members have tragically passed away, leaving fans with memories of their unforgettable performances. In this video, we honor the actors who brought MacGyver's world to life, exploring their careers, lives, and the lasting impact they left on television and fans alike. Join us as we remember these stars, celebrate their legacies, and reflect on the moments that made MacGyver truly timeless. Dana Elcar was 58 when he stepped into the role of Pete Thornton in MacGyver in 1985, a character that radiated authority, intelligence, and quiet compassion, serving as MacGyver's loyal mentor and moral anchor within the Phoenix Foundation. On screen, his calm, measured demeanor and subtle humor made him a stabilizing presence amidst the show's whirlwind of invention and danger. Yet his real-life story was far more turbulent and remarkable. Born on October 10, 1927 in Ferndale, Michigan, to a Swedish mother and a carpenter father, Elcar grew up in modest circumstances, experiencing the rigidity of a working-class upbringing while navigating the emotional distance of his family. His early exposure to discipline and resilience, combined with a stint in the Navy during World War II, forged a man capable of enduring adversity with determination. Off-screen, Elcar's journey was marked by personal upheavals and transformative challenges. In 1991, glaucoma stole his sight, a condition that could have ended his career, yet he refused to retreat. Instead, he advocated for his character, Pete Thornton, to become blind as well, turning a private tragedy into a public statement on representation. He continued performing on stage and television, notably delivering a powerful blind performance in Waiting for Godot, demonstrating that creativity and dedication transcend physical limitations. Elcar also devoted himself to mentoring younger actors, helping establish the Santa Paula Theater Center, and fostering a generation of performers in Southern California. He died of pneumonia on June 6, 2005 at age 77 in Ventura, California. While his estate was modest, including some residuals and property holdings, the true measure of his legacy lies in his groundbreaking contributions to on-screen inclusivity, the respect he earned within the acting community, and the enduring inspiration he provided to actors facing disability, making him an icon of resilience and courage in Hollywood's often unforgiving landscape. Robert Donner was 56 when he joined MacGyver in 1987 as Milt Bozer, a character whose quirky, neurotic energy offered comic relief, while enriching the show's ensemble with eccentric charm. On screen, Donner's portrayal of Bozer was simultaneously endearing and chaotic, the embodiment of lovable unpredictability, and it mirrored the multidimensionality of the actor himself. Born April 27, 1931 in New York City, Donner's childhood was itinerant and unstable, moving between New Jersey, Michigan, and Texas, often uprooted by his family's financial instability. Early exposure to insecurity and the need to adapt became a defining force, later informing his capacity to inhabit the oddball, unconventional roles that punctuated his career. After serving in the Navy, he drifted through a series of odd jobs, before Clint Eastwood, a neighbor, encouraged him to pursue acting, a decision that ultimately transformed his life. Donner achieved recognition in cult favorites such as Mork and Mindy, yet he never attained leading man stardom, and his career was peppered with professional frustrations and the struggle of being typecast as eccentric or comedic. Personal challenges included navigating a life of relative obscurity between projects and battling the insecurities of fame in Hollywood. He passed away on June 8, 2006 at 75 from a heart attack shortly after completing work on Hoot. While his estate was unremarkable, his cultural footprint, particularly in television, cult classics, remains significant. Donner's influence endures as a pioneer of the lovable oddball archetype, and his private passion for amateur golf and mentorship of younger actors reveals a man whose eccentric public persona masked a life rich in subtle achievements and understated generosity, leaving behind both tangible contributions and a legacy of creative audacity that continues to inspire fans and performers alike. Dick Butkus was 48 when he played Earl Dent in MacGyver's 1990 episode High Control, portraying a character who was a patchwork of toughness and vulnerability. A man grappling with the consequences of a life spent on the edge, struggling to reconnect with a daughter he had neglected, and a past that refused to stay buried. Dent's rough exterior moments of violent impulse and attempts at redemption mirrored Butkus's own journey from NFL stardom into Hollywood, a transition fraught with public scrutiny and private pain. Born December 9, 1942 in Chicago, Illinois, Butkus grew up in a Lithuanian-American working-class family on the city's south side, a neighborhood defined by poverty, ethnic tensions, and street violence. He endured childhood injuries, economic hardship, and the constant pressure to perform and survive, experiences that would later inform both his football career and his on-screen presence. Post-NFL life presented a new battlefield, chronic knee pain surgeries, and lingering health complications tested both his physical and mental resilience. He also became embroiled in legal battles with the NFL over disability claims and contractual disputes, public struggles that exposed him to relentless scrutiny and criticism. His acting career offered a form of therapy and reinvention, yet it came with challenges of its own, including being typecast as a muscle-bound enforcer, facing rejection in dramatic roles, and negotiating the fickle whims of Hollywood producers. Butkus's personal life was equally complex: long-term relationships strained by travel, a public divorce, and the pressures of celebrity combined with the emotional toll of maintaining a public persona. Through it all, he channeled his energy into philanthropy, founding the Butkus Foundation to combat steroid abuse and promote safe sports participation, leaving an enduring societal impact. He died on October 5, 2023 at age 80 from a heart attack with a net worth of approximately $8 million, leaving behind a legacy that extends beyond fame and fortune. The embodiment of a hard-nosed athlete, the resilience to reinvent oneself, and a cultural icon whose influence in sports and popular culture endures long past his passing. Gregory Sierra was 53 when he portrayed Captain Diaz in MacGyver's 1990 episode The Treasure of Manco, a commanding figure exuding authority, moral ambiguity, and a subtle simmering tension that made his every scene compelling. Diaz's presence was authoritative, yet fraught with the sense of personal conflict, reflecting the intensity Sierra carried from his own life. Born January 25 of 1937 in Manhattan, Spanish Harlem, Sierra was abandoned by his parents and raised by an aunt in a neighborhood plagued by racial and gang-related violence. These formative years exposed him to systemic inequities, fear, and survival instincts that would inform his portrayals of complex, often marginalized characters. His initial exposure to acting was almost accidental, accompanying a friend to an audition, and being cast himself a moment that launched him into theater and later into television. But life was rarely easy in 1978. His wife Susan Pollack died by suicide, an event that plunged him into grief and forced him to reassess both his personal and professional priorities. Sierra also faced challenges in navigating Hollywood's environment. He famously left Miami Vice after 4 episodes due to discomfort with relocation and personal misgivings, sacrificing career momentum for self-preservation. Over the decades, he maintained a presence in theater, film, and television while quietly battling stomach and liver cancer. Sierra's life reflected a pattern of resilience amid lost persistence despite typecasting and a refusal to compromise his personal values for fame. He passed away on January 4, 2021 at age 83 in Laguna Woods, California, with an estate estimated under $1 million. But his legacy is enduring. He broke barriers for Latino actors, portrayed nuanced and often revolutionary characters, and transformed personal suffering into art that resonated with audiences across decades, leaving an indelible mark on American television history. Frank Ferrucci was 30 when he appeared as Armin in MacGyver's 1987 episode, a minor yet intensely compelling role that hinted at the quiet depth and understated gravitas he brought to every screen appearance. Born September 14, 1957 in Prince George, British Columbia, Ferrucci hailed from a working-class Italian-Canadian family, where creative expression was rare and emotional restraint was the norm. His childhood was characterized by isolation, a strong internal world, and a keen observational sense that later informed his acting choices. Ferrucci's path to Hollywood was neither linear nor glamorous, his first speaking role opposite Bob Hope in a masterpiece of murder. 1986 was serendipitous, opening the door to a series of small, memorable roles across television and film, including cult favorites like The Comish Supernatural and The Possession. Behind the camera, Ferrucci struggled with depression and the persistent feeling of being invisible in an industry that rewarded charisma over craft, a battle he kept intensely private. He never married, lived deliberately away from celebrity culture, and found solace in his work rather than the trappings of fame. Ferrucci's career was punctuated by fleeting highlights, personal perseverance, and a commitment to authentic performance rather than notoriety. He died quietly on April 14, 2024, at age 66, cause undisclosed, leaving no public memorial and a negligible net worth. Yet his artistic footprint remains substantial. A collection of nuanced performances that illuminated the lives of minor characters with humanity and depth. A testament to the profound impact an understated actor can have, leaving a legacy felt more in subtlety and craft than in wealth or widespread recognition. Herb Edelman was 57 when he appeared as Gorman in MacGyver's 1990 episode Faith, Hope, and Charity, portraying a man whose outward gruffness masked deep vulnerability, a subtle echo of Edelman's own layered personality. Born November 5th, 1933 in Brooklyn, New York. To Jewish immigrants from Poland and Ukraine, Edelman grew up in a working-class neighborhood, witnessing poverty, social marginalization, and the pressures of assimilation. He faced constant teasing for his speech impediment and gangly frame, which compounded his feelings of inadequacy. Shaping a deep reservoir of emotional sensitivity he later poured into acting. Edelman's early adulthood was a maze of setbacks. He dropped out of Cornell's veterinary program, endured a brief and unfulfilling military stint as a radio announcer in the Korean War, and drove a taxi in Manhattan while dreaming of a different life. That dream crystallized when director Mike Nichols literally stepped into his cab, leading to Broadway roles and eventually a Hollywood career. Yet behind the acclaim, Edelman grappled with private turmoil, a bitter divorce from actress Louise Sorel, and a complicated romantic relationship with Christina Pickles, coupled with chronic emphysema that progressively eroded his health. He was known for being outspoken, often clashing with producers, and occasionally blacklisted, and his biggest professional disappointment came when he was abruptly replaced in a stage revival, despite months of preparation. Edelman died on July 21, 1996, in Los Angeles at age 62. His estate included modest real estate residuals from television work and a small collection of art amounting to a net worth estimated at $1.5 million. Beyond material assets, Edelman left an indelible cultural imprint. His Stanley Zbornak in The Golden Girls remains iconic, and his mastery of languages, painting, and sculpture attests to a hidden brilliance few appreciated. His legacy is one of quiet endurance, a testament to navigating personal suffering, while leaving an enduring mark on popular culture. Tim Rossovich was 40 when he played a political prisoner in MacGyver's 1986 episode, Prisoner of Conscience, a role that mirrored his own audacious, rule-defying persona. Born March 14, 1946 in Palo Alto, California, to Croatian-American parents, Rossovich was imbued from an early age with a fierce drive to excel and a taste for risk, qualities that defined both his athletic and acting careers. He was a first-round NFL draft pick, USC All-American and Pro Bowl linebacker, yet injuries and clashes with management curtailed what might have been a legendary sports trajectory. His pivot to Hollywood brought both opportunity and notoriety. Frequently cast as eccentric or tough characters, he brought his signature intensity to every performance, but often frustrated directors and co-stars with on-set stunts and improvisations. Off-screen, Rossovich faced turbulent personal waters. His marriage to Michael Karen Tritt ended in divorce, and he struggled with the lingering effects of injuries and declining health, compounded by a restlessness that never abated. He was known for dangerous feats like chewing glass or setting himself ablaze, a literal embodiment of his risk-taking streak, and a metaphor for the internal chaos he navigated. Rossovich passed away from respiratory arrest on December 6, 2018 in Grass Valley, California, at age 72. While his estate was modest, his life's impact spanned two worlds, sports and entertainment, leaving stories of bravado, resilience, and daring that few could replicate. Rossovich's cultural imprint is one of audacity, a cautionary tale of talent and ambition, entwined with self-destructive impulses, demonstrating that the thrill of performance sometimes comes at a steep personal cost. Richard Romanus was 42 when he appeared as James Crow in MacGyver's 1985 episode, Twice Stung delivering a brooding, intense performance that highlighted his ability to channel philosophical depth and emotional complexity into every scene. Born February 28, 1943 in Barre, Vermont, to Lebanese-American parents, Romanus grew up steeped in Catholic and intellectual traditions, cultivating introspection, a penchant for analysis, and a reflective temperament. His childhood was marked by emotional restraint and subtle pressures to conform, which he absorbed quietly, but shaped his creative and personal identity. Romanus earned a philosophy degree before studying acting under Lee Strasberg, yet his professional life was punctuated by both acclaim and periods of exile from Hollywood, due to his uncompromising approach and personal principles. His personal life was equally complex. A turbulent first marriage gave way to a partnership with Oscar-nominated costume designer Anthea Silbert, with whom he relocated to Skiathos, Greece, seeking a quieter life devoted to writing and reflection. Romanus reinvented himself as an author, producing the memoir Act Third and the novel Chrysalis Works that earned critical praise and established a new dimension to his artistic legacy. He died on December 23, 2023 in Volos, Greece at age 80, leaving intellectual property literary works and a cultural footprint spanning multiple continents. His estate included a modest fortune alongside the intangible richness of artistic contribution, while few remember the poignant fact that he shared screen time with his brother, Robert Romanus, on MacGyver, blending family ties with professional craft. Romanus's life was a study in reinvention, reflecting both the trials of Hollywood and the pursuit of creative authenticity, leaving behind a legacy of acting and literature that continues to resonate quietly but powerfully. John Anderson was 63 when he embodied Harry Jackson, MacGyver's grandfather in 1985, a role that added emotional depth and generational gravitas to the series. On screen, his presence was imposing, yet tender, blending wisdom, authority, and warmth, making audiences feel the enduring bond between grandfather and grandson. Behind the imposing exterior, Anderson's life was shaped by early hardship and formative loss. Born October 20th, 1922 in Clayton, Illinois, he grew up in a rural setting under a mother who worked tirelessly to provide for him and siblings after their father abandoned the family. Anderson's early encounters with adversity fostered resilience and an introspective temperament, which he channeled into theater studies at the University of Iowa and later into television and film work, including memorable roles in Psycho and The Twilight Zone. His career, though steady, was not without heartbreak. The death of his wife Patricia in 1989 sent him into a period of profound grief and isolation, influencing his performances with an authenticity of sorrow rarely captured on screen. Despite his successes, he was briefly blacklisted in the 1960s due to alleged political sympathies, and he endured repeated professional rejections that reinforced his meticulous, serious approach to acting. Anderson died of a heart attack on August 7, 1992, at 69, leaving behind a modest estate but a wealth of work that influenced character acting for decades. Beyond his on-screen presence, Anderson was quietly multifaceted. He had once contemplated a gubernatorial run in Illinois, reflecting an intellect and civic engagement little known to the public. His legacy is preserved in his nuanced portrayals of authority and the subtle, compelling humanity he brought to every role, offering a masterclass in depth and consistency to future generations of actors navigating Hollywood's mercurial terrain. Joe Santos was 55 when he stepped into MacGyver 1986 as Jimmy the Eraser Kendall, a man whose polite smile hid the tidy finality of a hired killer. And on screen, Santos wore that duality like a second skin, affable, exhausted, always 3 breaths away from admitting the cost of what he'd done. Born Joseph John Minieri Jr. on June 9, 1931 in Brooklyn, a day his family remembers as haunted, because his father died that same day. Santos's origins read like a noir origin story. An Italian-American boy raised by a mother who hustled to keep food on the table, later trading olive oil tins for neon lights and a nightclub microphone in Havana. Childhood wasn't gentle poverty, the grit of Brooklyn streets and the silence that grows where grief is not spoken of. He served in the Korean War, came home with the kind of steadiness that can either heal or harden a man, and bounced between semi-pro football and blue-collar jobs until acting became the improbable escape hatch. His earliest big break arrived the way many old-school stories do, through connections, favors, and the backstage generosity of bigger names. And once he had Hollywood's attention, he never let it make him soft. But life kept collecting dues. His wife Maria Montero, the partner of 3 decades, died in 1988 and left Santos with a silence that no part could fill. He never remarried, and those who worked with him say his laughter after was quieter, more practiced. Career highs in television. The Rockford Files' steady character work. Later a small arc on The Sopranos paid the bills and preserved dignity. But he never quite shook the memory of poverty. Friends tell of him trimming trees and doing odd jobs in leaner seasons, pragmatic actions that belie any glamour. He died of a heart attack on March 18, 2016 in Santa Monica, at 84, leaving an estate modest by celebrity standards, estimated in the low millions, but a legacy that resists a dollar sign, an actor who grounded crime and cop archetypes in real-world fatigue. Lawrence Dobkin was 67 when he appeared on MacGyver, 1986, as Alexander Karsov, that thin-lipped Soviet psychiatrist whose mirror calm suggested a man used to keeping entire rooms off balance. Dobkin's portrayal was surgical, the kind of performance informed by a lifetime of radio, chiaroscuro, and the slow, patient craft of an actor who learned to haunt microphones before studios. Born on September 16, 1919 in Manhattan, to a Jewish family steeped in the storytelling traditions of the early 20th century, Dobkin's formative years were threaded with radio scripts, dramatic readings, and a wartime service in the U.S. Army Air Forces, where he helped craft broadcast's psychological tools of influence that left him both fascinated and wary of authority. That mixture of craft and skepticism became his signature. Across 7 decades, he moved from radio's golden age to countless television character parts and directing gigs, leaving fingerprints on shows people now forget they loved. The childhood and early adult contours that made him brilliant were not immune to private turmoil. Multiple marriages and painful divorces, creative rivalries that bled into personal life, and long stretches of work that paid pennies for reputation. The late career years showed a man both venerable and vulnerable. Health issues crept in, and the industry's indifference to elder statesmen stung. He died of heart failure on October 28, 2002, at age 83, owning a modest Los Angeles home, and a catalog of residuals that trickled in rather than flowed, yet leaving a legacy of voices and characters that other actors and scriptwriters quietly studied. The scandalous little-known bits are telling Dobkin could be ruthless as a director, cutting actors down to make a point. He also guarded his private life like a rehearsed monologue, rarely allowing the press a line to hang on. Michael Constantine was 58 when he took the small but resonant role of Inspector Jan Messich on MacGyver, 1985, the sort of authority figure whose silence speaks like a gavel. And Constantine-born Gus F. Strashew, on May 22, 1927 in Reading, Pennsylvania, knew how to make an eyebrow or a long look do the work of paragraphs. The son of Greek immigrants raised in a steel town where ambition rubbed raw against hard labor, Constantine carried that immigrant cadence into every part he worked as a night watchman and at shooting galleries while studying drama scraping and practicing until Broadway finally answered. His breakthrough and Emmy-winning turn as Seymour Kaufman in Room 222 gave him legitimacy, but not a ticket to gentler days. The life of a character actor is a seesaw of acclaim and obscurity, and Constantine wrote it with a stubborn humor. Personal life brought its share of ruptures, 2 divorces, periods of estrangement from children, and the slow ache of doors that closed in mid-career. Yet he kept working, accumulating roles that showed range and depth until a late career phoenix moment in My Big Fat Greek Wedding transformed him into a cultural touchstone. Suddenly, the Windex-wielding patriarch became shorthand for immigrant paternalism, a comic-turned-guardian figure who reminded audiences of the tenderness under the bluster. He battled health issues in later years and retired into quieter days before dying on August 31st, 2021, at 94, leaving an estate. Scholars peg below $5 million, but a far larger spiritual inheritance. He redefined how immigrant fathers could be both ridiculous and sacred on screen. Lesser known and sharper details, Constantine was ferociously proud of his Greekness and could be prickly about scripts that treated ethnicity as a punchline. He held grudges for creative slights, but also mentored younger actors with a ferocious kindness that surprised those who'd only seen his comic face. Professionally, he faced stretches of obscurity and near-erasure times when agents told him roles had dried up, but his persistence and a late renaissance rewrote his obituary while he was still alive, from the periphery to the center of a worldwide joke that turned into affection. Walter Gotell was 65 when he walked onto the MacGyver set to play General Baranov in the 1989 episode Gold Rush. And on screen he fit the role like an old glove, rigid posture, clipped delivery, that impassive iron face Hollywood loved to dress in Cold War uniforms. Yet the man beneath the KGB facade had an origin story that reads like a small European catastrophe, born Walter Jacques Gödel on March 15, 1924. In Bonn, he was raised in Berlin by parents Margaret Wilhelmine, née Kohn, and Jakob Gödel, and because of rising anti-Semitism, emigrated to the United Kingdom with his family in 1938, a formative uprooting that left him both adaptable and guarded. He naturalized as a British citizen in 1948 and started acting in repertory as a teen, but even at the peak of his Bond-era fame, Morzeny and From Russia, with Love. Then the recurring General Gogol Gotell carried the outsider's caution into every role, a man who had learned to speak other languages, play other men, and never reveal the full interior. His private life flickered between loss and reinvention. Married to Yvonne Hills from 1958 until her death in 1974, they had one daughter, Carol. He remarried Celeste Mitchell the same year, and quietly built business interests managing engineering firms, and even owning a farm in Ireland moves that suggest a search for control after a childhood forced into flight. The gravitas he lent to villainy was earned, not invented. Casting directors tapped into his accent and lived history to make Cold War threats credible on screen. Cancer took him on May 5, 1997 in London, closing the book on an actor whose modest estate and private farm belied the cultural footprint of a man who helped define the cinematic image of mid-20th century menace while carrying in private the history of a family who escaped a continent's falling sky. William Morgan Shepard was 56 when he first became the slippery glass case of menace, Dr. Zito, in MacGyver's January 1989 episode Deadly Dreams. And the performance felt uncannily inevitable, a voice honed in Shakespearean registers, a face weathered by classical theater, a cadence that could pivot from genial professor to predator without a blink. Born on August 24, 1932 in London, Shepard's early life, shaped by an Anglo-Irish upbringing and service in the British Merchant Navy during the Korean War, fed both his discipline and his appetite for complex characters. After graduating from RADA in 1958, he spent a dozen years with the Royal Shakespeare Company, learning to excavate the private rot beneath public composure. The roles he accepted across film and television, Klingon wardens, Confederate generals, the many guest parts on Star Trek and Babylon 5, were studies in authority, ambiguity, and the human voice as instrument. None of that background was wasted when he constructed Dr. Zito, a manipulative psychiatrist whose intellect doubled as a weapon. Off camera, Shepard's life read like a working actor's manual. A steady marriage to Regina Lisa Scherer, married 1963, a son, Mark, who followed him into the profession and the quiet grind of stage tours and character turns that pay the bills while building a reputation. In later years, he embraced voice work, the kindly Santa, in Disney specials, a contrasting coda to the dark men he often played, and he never shed the RSC's structural rigor, even as aging and industry shifts narrowed the roles available to him. when he died in Los Angeles on January 6, 2019 at 86. The notice was not just for a character actor, but for a chameleon who had spent decades mining the fissures of temperament and politics for parts that revealed more about the times than the scripts themselves. His legacy survives in the dozen small, unnerving moments on stage and studio booths on screen, where a polite English voice became the last thing a viewer could trust. Cleavon Little was 50 when he swaggered into MacGyver's Black Corsage 1989 as Frank Colton, bringing the same Quicksilver charisma that had made him both a stage star and a cinematic stain eraser. The man who could undercut a room with a grin and make audiences question whether they had been laughing with him or at him. Born Cleavon Jake Little on June 1, 1939 in Chickasha, Oklahoma, and raised in San Diego. His early life blended working-class hustle with a drive toward performance. He cleaned buildings to pay for college, graduated from San Diego State with a degree in speech therapy in 1965, and won scholarships that propelled him to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in Juilliard. That training translated into theater triumphs. Purley on Broadway in 1970 earned him both a Tony and a Drama Desk Award and announced a black actor who could headline with intelligence and charm, at a time when Broadway and Hollywood were still practicing cautious inclusion. His career was a study in both breakthrough and limitation. Blazing Saddles 1974 made him a household name. Sheriff Bart's wit was revolutionary in its satirical take on race, but Hollywood's casting instincts remained narrow, and the roles that should have multiplied sometimes did not. His private life kept to modest rhythms, a brief marriage to Valerie Wiggins 1972-1974, and a daughter, Adia Millett, while colleagues remember him as generous and quietly political in support of minority artists. He later inspired a scholarship at the American Academy of Dramatic Arts to help do what the system had often failed to do. Little fought colon cancer in private, continuing to work while disease advanced, and he died at home in Sherman Oaks on October 20, 1992, age 53. His absence felt as both a personal loss to those who loved him and a cultural one, a comic and dramatic actor who had punctured stereotypes and left behind a small but fierce legacy of audiences who remembered not just the jokes, but the intelligence behind them. Though time has passed, the laughter they gave us still echoes. The cast of MacGyver brought joy to millions, and even though some of them are no longer with us, their performances live on. As we remember those we've lost, we also celebrate the legacy they left behind, one that continues to entertain and connect generations. Thank you for joining us in honoring these unforgettable stars. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more tributes to the legends of television history.